This is the Realme 10 Pro, but with a twist to it. That's right, this is the Realme 10 Pro Coca-Cola Special Limited Edition that is only available in designated countries, and it's actually Coca-Cola's first partnership with a smartphone brand. Just like other popular special edition phones, the Coca-Cola edition comes with a newly designed back, a special user interface, customized sound effects, and unique camera filters. As for the phone itself, what you get is the same Realme 10 Pro. So let's get our hands on the phone and check it out. Let's start with the unboxing experience. Right off the bat, we can see that the packaging for the Coca-Cola edition is surprisingly big. If you place the package of a normal phone right next to it, you'll notice a huge difference. I guess Apple would not be too happy with this kind of environmental unfriendliness. Talking about the packaging itself, we can see some cool light effects on the surface that make the whole packaging seem a bit more premium than others. And you'll see these kinds of effects throughout the packaging. Opening it, we see the Coca-Cola edition packaging for the Realme 10 Pro itself, as well as a cool Coca-Cola edition Real Meow mascot. If you can put actual Coke inside the Real Meow mascot and drink from it, that would actually be very awesome. Opening the smaller box, we see more Coca-Cola themed patterns and art throughout the outside and inside. Inside the box, we get some exclusive stickers of Coca-Cola and Real Meow, some literature, a Coke Cap SIM ejector tool, as well as a limited number card. Underneath, it's the same as a normal Realme 10 Pro. We get the phone itself with a beautiful Coca-Cola themed back, a Type A to Type C cable, a transparent silicone phone case, as well as a Type A charging brick. While I like the overall packaging and custom-made stickers and SIM ejector, I think Realme should have made a better phone case. I mean, why not go the extra mile and make a good-looking case, right? Moving on to the exterior design and build quality, I can sense that Realme is trying to make the phone feel like an actual can of Coke. Starting with the new design, we see that the two camera rings have the iconic Coca-Cola red colors, and the right side of the phone is covered with the Coca-Cola logo. I had seen pictures online speculating that the whole back would be covered with the Coca-Cola logo, but I feel like this kind of 30% black and 70% red looks better than making the whole back red. As for the back materials, it uses a matte imitation metal process, and the metal-like coating process does make the phone look and feel like an actual can of Coke. However, even though the reflective back does look like the surface of a can of Coke, the feeling of holding an actual can of Coke is still quite different from holding the phone. Overall, I really like the design, and my only disappointment is that they didn't paint the lock button red. I think that would make it look even better. Other than the outside, the user interface has been redesigned as well. First of all, when the phone is locked, you see a special wallpaper featuring Coca-Cola edition Real Meow in the background. After unlocking the phone, you get a special Coca-Cola wallpaper, custom-made Coca-Cola themed icons, as well as special Coke-themed charging animations. For third-party apps, the system will also put a red ring around the apps to make the style more uniform throughout the phone. In addition, the ringtone has been changed to the popular sound effects that you hear in TV commercials. And the shutter sound now mimics the sound of fizzing bubbles when opening a can of Coke. Personally speaking, I quite enjoy the custom-made icons and the special ringtone. However, I feel like the new shutter sound is just a little weird when taking a photo, so I'll just turn it off. By the way, there are also 80s Sola retro filters within the camera app, but I'll get to that when talking about the camera system. Now let's talk about the Realme 10 Pro itself. Starting with its display, we see a 6.72-inch Full HD Plus LCD screen with 391 pixels per inch that supports a maximum 120 Hz refresh rate. What's interesting about this display is the fact that it has one of the slimmest side bezels of any smartphone at just 1mm thick, and the top bezel is only 1.15mm thick. Unfortunately, we still have a chin at the bottom. If we could also get a super thin bezel at the bottom, that would be awesome. As for the display itself, it's quite vibrant when looking at the Coca-Cola themed user interface, but it's not super bright when you are viewing it on a very sunny day. Also, while the phone can switch between 60 and 120 Hz to save battery when you are using the phone, the auto switch function might not work in some apps. For example, when you are on the settings page, even if you're not doing anything, the phone will still maintain a 120 Hz refresh rate, which is kind of weird. As for scrolling through the web or picture libraries, the auto refresh rate works just fine. Moving on to the camera system. On the back, we have a 108 megapixel main camera, as well as a 2 megapixel portrait lens. Honestly speaking, we can just ignore the 2 megapixel portrait lens. We also have a 16 megapixel selfie camera in the front. So let's take a look at image quality, as well as the 80s Cola retro filter effect. Starting with a 108 megapixel main camera, even though it is indeed a 108 megapixel camera, most of the time you'll only be shooting in 12 megapixel mode because you have to manually select the 108 megapixel mode to shoot in full resolution. However, 12 megapixels is actually enough for daily use, since the high resolution mode takes longer to capture a single image, and you'll also lose a lot of the post-processing done by the phone since the image file is too large to process. Plus, the image quality of the 12 megapixel mode is generally sufficient. Looking at the sample image, we see that the 12 megapixel mode actually holds up pretty well. The colors are accurate and vibrant, and if you throw in the same image taken by an iPhone 13 Pro Max, you realize the Realme 10 Pro is actually doing very well. However, this doesn't mean that the Realme 10 Pro can directly compete with the iPhone. When moving to an outside environment where there is a ton of contrast, we begin to see the Realme 10 Pro struggling with dynamic range. In this image, while the sky is completely blown out on the Realme 10 Pro, the iPhone still manages to retain highlight information. As for the telephoto lens, we can just ignore it since the image quality is pretty bad. Besides image quality, the Realme 10 Pro also has a street photography mode, and you can use the 80s Coke retro filter in this mode as well. As for the filter itself, here are some sample images I took with it. You can decide for yourself how it looks. As for video quality, I would say it's passable if you're just planning to document daily stuff, but the dynamic range and sharpness are just not that good on the Realme 10 Pro. Also, I would say you should try to avoid walking while shooting videos with this phone, as it has no built-in optical image stabilization, so you'll likely be getting some very shaky footage. As for nighttime photography, I would say it's doing a pretty decent job. Even though you lose a lot of contrast when shooting night scenes with this phone, the images coming out are still pretty clean. However, if you plan to take photos with this phone in a pitch black environment, then the Realme 10 Pro is definitely not going to do well. Speaking of performance and battery, powering the Realme 10 Pro is a 6nm Snapdragon 695 5G processor, which is a chipset that everyone is quite familiar with. The phone comes with 128GB of ROM, and you can always get more storage by using an external memory card for up to 1TB of storage space. It has an 8GB plus 8GB dynamic RAM function, although I'm not too familiar with this type of RAM. Overall, the phone can handle daily tasks such as watching short videos, browsing the web, taking photos, and replying to messages just fine. In terms of gaming, some casual games will run just fine, but graphic-intense games definitely are not designed for this type of daily phone. As for its battery life, the Realme 10 Pro comes with a 5000 mAh battery that supports 33-watt SuperVOOC fast charging, allowing you to get the phone charged to 50% in 29 minutes. While this isn't one of the quickest charging setups out there, it can still be handy if you're always on the go. Finally, let's talk about some additional features. Unlike other recent flagship smartphones that have gone with a roundish design, the Realme 10 Pro has adopted a rectangular design. I personally prefer phones with this shape, and I still believe the iPhone 5, which also has a rectangular design, is the most beautiful phone ever. As for the ports, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack, a Type-C port, as well as speakers at the bottom. We also see that the volume keys and lock button are on the side, although I still wish the lock button was red. So, that's all we have for you today. What do you think of this cooperation between Realme and Coca-Cola? Let me know in the comments section down below. Also, if you want to see other smartphone reviews, click here. As always, for tech and gadgets, we got you covered, and see you next time.